Do you really believe that the iconic episodes of The Simpsons and The X-Files about a deadly Hantavirus are just a mere coincidence and a fun foresight into the future? Forget about mysticism and the gift of prophecy. The showrunners of major studios never predicted the future. They carefully programmed it for you and me. Hollywood has been operating for decades as a closed testing ground, where scenarios of social control during major upheavals, epidemics, and global crises are secretly tested. Remember the iconic scene from The Simpsons about the Asian flu that arrives in a typical American town right inside a box of cheap souvenirs? Residents get infected. Panic grows. Authorities cordon off the area. Sound familiar? The episode came out long before real lockdowns became a global, everyday norm. Now pull up the 90s episode of The X-Files, where agents investigate an outbreak of a mysterious virus, strikingly similar to that very Hantavirus. Coincidence? Possibly. But when there are dozens of such striking coincidences in a row, the naive layman unwittingly starts asking uncomfortable questions to someone at the top. Dozens of compilation clips are going viral online today. Cruise ships with infected passengers, frozen cities, faceless figures in hazmat suits amidst a frantic crowd. Viewers are bewildered as to how screenwriters of the last century could describe with such frightening accuracy events that we literally just experienced ourselves. The answer is simple and terrifying at the same time. No mysticism, no gift of clairvoyance. Behind these loud predictions lies the cold calculation of closed institutes of social forecasting. There is an entire discipline, known to a narrow circle of specialists as predictive programming. It sounds like sci-fi, but it is a fully functional tool of influence. The essence of the method is simple. Images of future upheavals are planted in people's minds in advance through mass culture. Lockdowns, quarantines, invisible enemies, mass surveillance. When such an idea flashes on the TV screen hundreds of times, it stops causing shock, resistance, or any kind of outrage in real life. The viewer has already seen all this in their favorite TV show. The brain automatically reads the picture as familiar, safe, and expected. Resistance is broken before the events even begin. Think it's an exaggeration? Then pay attention to an interesting fact. Screenwriters of major shows regularly consult with experts from military and intelligence agencies. This is not a conspiracy theory. It's a publicly confirmed fact. The Pentagon and the CIA have official liaison offices for working with Hollywood studios and producers. Plots are carefully coordinated. Images are adjusted. Individual scenes are completely rewritten. All this is done under the guise of authenticity and supposedly patriotic support for national cinema. But behind the facade of beautiful press releases hides a much more interesting function. Pop culture becomes a soft, imperceptible tool for the psychological preparation of entire generations of viewers. Let's return to the Hantavirus. The disease itself was officially described by scientists only in the 1980s and was considered a rare, regional threat. But why did it suddenly begin to flash en masse in popular cartoons and TV shows of the late 90s? A coincidence? Once again, that convenient, comforting word. During those exact same years, the Pentagon was actively studying biological threats, and closed laboratories received record funding to research aerosol transmission methods. And it is exactly at this moment that a screenwriter, who previously worked as a consultant in one of the think tanks, brings the idea of an episode about a mysterious virus to the studio.
The plot is approved lightning fast. The budget is allocated without the usual bureaucratic delays. The episode airs at the peak of the ratings and settles into the collective memory of millions of viewers. A few years later, a familiar word is heard in the news, a virus outbreak in Asia, and the viewer reacts internally as if they have already seen it all. No panic, no shock, no mass resistance to quarantine measures. The subconscious mind approved the scenario long ago, back when it was watching another episode of a favorite show. This is exactly the main task of predictive programming. Not to predict the future, but to prepare the psyche of millions of people for the desired scenario in advance. Think about it yourself. When the authorities shut down entire cities, turn off the economy, and introduce emergency measures, the crowd must have a ready-made cultural justification for what is happening. Otherwise, any real attempt to restrict the freedom of millions would trigger an immediate explosion of rage, riots, the destruction of the elite, and the loss of control over vast territories. But if the viewer has already seen all this 100 times in movies, reality becomes a continuation of the plot. Resistance fades at the very stage of the initial shock. The Simpsons, The X-Files, Containment, Contagion, and dozens of other cult projects act as a unified textbook on behavior during a global crisis. And who is really behind this grandiose operation? This is where the most curious and, at the same time, the most carefully hidden aspect from the general public begins. There is a layer of closed think tanks whose names rarely appear in the news. They operate at the intersection of sociology, mass psychology, and military strategy. Their main task is to model the behavior of entire societies in crisis conditions, and to find vulnerable points in the collective consciousness of millions of ordinary people in advance. Through a complex network of foundations, grants, and shell production companies, these centers carefully reach out to screenwriters, producers, and directors at the world's major Hollywood studios. No direct orders, no signed contracts with serious wording, just successfully planted ideas, generous fees, and the right introductions at private parties. The screenwriter themselves sincerely believes they are a free artist, a genius and a visionary. They just don't know where the idea in their head came from. And the idea came from an analytical memo written long before that, somewhere in a sterile office with a top secret sign on a massive door. And here the main question arises. If mass consciousness has been programmed for decades, how free are our own reactions, fears, emotions, and beliefs at all? When you once again see an alarming headline about a new outbreak of a mysterious virus, who exactly is reacting inside you? You or the built-in script? The answer is unpleasant. Most of our reactions to crises have been rehearsed long ago through thousands of hours of screen time, news bulletins, and social advertising campaigns. We cry where we are ordered to cry. We fear what we are told to fear. We obediently sit at home when the script demands silence. And every time, we sincerely think that this is our own choice, our personal conscious reaction, our free will as adult thinking human beings. A skeptic will object. Where is the evidence? Where are the leaked documents? Where are the specific names of those very handlers sitting in closed offices and writing these scripts? And here begins the most interesting part. The documents do exist, and some of them have even been declassified. Media relations programs exist officially and publicly. Former intelligence officers openly tell in their memoirs how they helped set up scenes, cast actors, and edit dialogue in major Hollywood blockbusters. But these confessions drown in an ocean of entertainment content. Nobody seriously discusses them in prime time. They are neatly reduced to boring archival trivia, because the main weapon of predictive programming is not the information itself, but the carefully constructed context in which this information completely loses its meaning. They tell you the truth right to your face, and you just laugh and brush it off. An ideal construct where the deception doesn't even try to hide.
The Simpsons do not predict the future. The Simpsons carefully rehearse it with you, episode by episode, joke by joke, frame by frame, year after year. The X-Files does not guess viral threats. It normalizes the very idea of an invisible enemy against which an ordinary person is, by definition, absolutely defenseless. And this means a person will willingly surrender their freedom to anyone who promises protection, safety, salvation, and the notorious return to a familiar, normal,
everyday life. Screenwriters here are neither great prophets nor malicious conspirators. They are merely talented instruments in a large, multi-year psychological operation. There are no prophets. There are carefully compiled manuals. There are very attentive handlers, and there is us, a grateful, trusting, and surprisingly obedient audience. The next time you see yet another frightening coincidence in your favorite TV show, ask yourself just one question. Who exactly is writing the script for your life?